Hi, it's Colleen. Today we're going to take those everyday dry embossed images and add some color, and then we're going to add some shine with heat embossing. So let's do some heat embossing over dry embossing today. Welcome to the WOW YouTube channel. If you like what you see here, hit the subscribe button and the like button so you never miss another video. So we're going to work with 3 different embossing folders. The first one that we are working with is from Altenew, and it's a really beautiful one called Perfect Poinsettias, great for the holidays. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to take 3 inks and I'm going to apply them directly over the debossed side of the embossing folder. Now the debossed side of the embossing folder is basically the background, I guess you could call it, of the embossed image. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but when you look at your embossing folder, the side where the image is lifting up is the embossed side, and the debossed side is the side where it's kind of caved in, the image. So here I am. I inked up this whole thing. Now I'm taking a piece of watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to spray the surface of this. It's just an A2 sized watercolor cardstock. Then I'm going to place that wet piece of cardstock in my embossing folder, gently close it up, and run it through my die cut machine. Now the key here is to be careful not to move the paper once it is in your embossing folder so you don't smudge the image too much. Now I'm going to remove, I ran it through my die cut machine, I'm going to remove it, and you're going to see the glorious result of doing this first technique of adding color. Look at that. I love that. I never get tired of doing that. So now that we have some color, let's add some shine with some WOW Midnight Dreams embossing powder. This is a gorgeous glittery embossing powder that I thought would be a perfect top layer to this image. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to run my WOW embossing pad over the top layers of the embossed image. So the first thing we did was we ran ink over the embossing folder. Now we're running our WOW embossing pad over the embossed image. And 3D embossing folders are perfect for this technique because there's a lot of layers to the embossing folder. So you can get a lot of color going on all the different layers and even still see a little bit of that white peeking through in the background. So that's why I really like this. Now, right now it looks like a hot mess, but bear with me and stay with me because once I clean that embossing powder up on the image a bit and heat emboss it, it's going to look fantabulous. So now I'm ready to heat it using my WOW dual speed heat tool. I put it on high and I'm going to heat this embossing powder. Now, if you're new to embossing, when your embossing powder first goes on, it's a matte finish, but when you heat emboss it and it's dry, it's glossy. And you're going to see the glossy look in a few minutes when I show you the finished card. Now you see how shiny that looks now? That's how you know your embossing powder is dry. And isn't that card gorgeous? Oh, I love it. Okay, card number 2. We're going to do something a little bit different here. The first thing that I'm going to do is do some ink blending on a background. So I'm using 3 different colors of inks going from lighter to darker. And what I'm going to do is ink around the outer part of the card and leave the center part white. So you create kind of like a focal point highlight in the middle of the card. And you're going to see why I'm doing this technique in a minute. It has something to do with the embossing folder that I'm going to use for this particular technique. So I'm just going around and doing some quick ink blending. I have speeded this up. I really don't ink blend this quickly. just a side note there. So now that my ink blending is done, I have taken this beautiful embossing folder called Frame of Leaves. Now I am going over the embossed side of the embossing folder with my WOW sticky embossing pad. So remember, with the first card, we went over the deboss side. Now I'm going over the emboss side, which is the side where the image is popping up off of the folder. And then I'm going to put my inked up image inside my embossing folder and run it through my die cut machine. Again, being careful not to move the paper once it's in the embossing folder. Now, when I remove this one from the embossing folder, the WOW ink pad is clear, so you don't see anything yet, but in a minute I'm going to start adding embossing powder, and then you're going to start seeing the miracle show up here. So I'm using three different shades of, three different embossing powders, Frame of Leaves, Fresh Stem, and then I believe Bella's Forest. And I liked using the three colors because I wanted to go with like a light green, a medium green, and then something really dark. And I really love how this is going to turn out. It's a little more subtle than the first card. So now I'm going to heat it up. Again, you want to heat it up until the embossing powder looks shiny. And I want to show you a little trick here. There were a few of the leaves that I missed, so I'm going in with the WOW embossing pen. Now the WOW embossing pen works the same way as your sticky embossing pad, only it's in a pen so you can get in the little nooks and crannies if you've missed embossing powder, which I did here. So I'm going through a few spots and adding it back in, and then I'm going to put some more powder in and heat set that, and then this will be done. Isn't that green? Oh, that's a gorgeous color. I love my embossing powders. So I'm just going to heat that up, but I wanted to show you how beautiful this one turned out. Look at that. It's a little more subtle, but it's gorgeous. Okay, now this time I'm using an embossing folder called Layered Snowflakes, and this is very quickly becoming one of my favorite embossing folders. I'm going over it with some different shades of blue ink, just like I did with card number 1. And I'm going to do a similar thing as with card number 1, which is to spray some watercolor cardstock with water and then place it inside my embossing folder. You can do it dry. You don't have to spray it with water, but I like the look that I get when I do use water. It kind of gives it a little more of a distressed look, and I like that. And then run it through my die cut machine and then take it back out, and you're going to see the miracle that occurs after it's run through the machine. Isn't that stunning? And I like that it looks distressed. I like that look right there. Now, I wanted to show you this because I am actually running over this with my heat tool because the cardstock had water on it. I want to make sure this is absolutely dried before I go to the next step with my embossing powder. Otherwise, the embossing powder will stick to everything. So just make sure that your card panel is fully dry and you go over it with your anti-static tool before you add your embossing powder. And I am doing a little extra protection here by adding this to my card base so that I have a little more protection since I did add water to this. I don't want that card panel to warp. So now I'm going over the snowflakes, the embossed snowflakes, with my WOW sticky pad. Just a very, very light, gentle touch. It's okay if some of the embossing powder gets onto the bottom layers of the card panel. We're not going for a perfect look here. We're going with a little bit of a mixed media look anyway, so that's okay. And I'm going over the snowflakes with weathered gold embossing powder. I just thought that gold would be the perfect complement to that background. Silver would be absolutely beautiful too. Now I did get a little extra embossing powder where I didn't want it, and it kind of made it so that you couldn't see the snowflakes. So I did take a little paintbrush and I removed the excess, and now I'm just heat drying it. And there you have it. This one's done too. So here are 3 cards. Here they are with the sentiments added. 2 of them are Christmas holiday sentiments, and one of them is just a very pretty sentiment. I love every single one of these. And I think that I'm going to be doing a lot more of this technique because this is way too much fun. Isn't that beautiful? I'm really glad you were able to join me today, and I hope that you grab whatever embossing folders you get, and you grab your tools and you grab your embossing powders and start adding some colored layers to your everyday embossing folders. Remember to subscribe to the WOW channel, and thanks for coming by.